Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Rich Troutwine. I am the PestPac Product Marketing Manager. And today we're going to be talking about defining the future of door-to-door with one of our PestPac customers and co-creators, Mason Gibb, as well as Mike Harris, one of our sales engineers here. Before we kick it off officially, we will save some time at the end for questions. So put any questions that you might have in the Q&A box below, and we'll make sure to answer those and save some time at the end to chat, as well as this will be recorded. So should you need to hop off, a recording will be sent to you within a few days. And with that, here's our agenda for the day. So we're going to be chatting with Mason about his involvement and his process through our door-to-door co-creation process. But really, we want to pick his brain about all things door-to-door strategy and really leverage his expertise in how we go to market and knock on some doors. And then Mike will be walking through our future roadmap and some things we have coming down the line. So with that, I will pass it over to Mike and Mason to give a brief intro to themselves, and then we have a little highlight slide for Mason after this as well. So Mike, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Rich, and thank you everyone for joining. Again, my name is Mike Harris. I am the sales engineer for PestPac here at WorkWave. Been in the industry some time myself, and also enjoy helping all the customers with PestPac and Sales Center. And with us is Mason. Mason, thank you so much for joining and to provide your insights to everything. So it's great to have you. And next slide. Mason, this slide speaks for itself, but I welcome you to chime in and tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mike. So I've been in the door-to-door space for 7 years now. I've started off by actually working for a couple other companies. Worked for 3 companies prior to starting my own company, and we're going into our 5th summer this year. So our company has grown almost exclusively door-to-door until just recently. And yeah, personally, I've sold over 2,000 accounts through door-to-door. My best month was last year, where in 21 knocking days, I serviced 153,000 in revenue, and one for those of you that are familiar with the door-to-door space, Sam Taggart, his Maple Door, which is kind of the Canadian equivalent to a Golden Door.
That's amazing. I'm just thinking about that 2,000 plus accounts sold through door-to-door alone. I'm just thinking that's what you've sold. I'm imagining how many doors you knocked on to reach that number. It's probably really incredible. So awesome. Yeah, go ahead and the next slide. So Mason, please walk us through this like co-creator process. Like how'd you get started? What made you do it? And what was the process like?
Yeah, I guess so. It's introduced to Sales Center and this idea that they were going to target the ability to work with door-to-door companies a little bit more, and so that's of great interest to us because we currently one of our struggles with growth is transitioning data from our current software into PestPac, our door knocking software, which then later on gets transferred into PestPac. And so when I heard that PestPac was looking at, potentially creating something that could speak to the back end and make it a little simpler from point of contact sale to that customer getting inputted into PestPac to getting serviced, I was definitely really interested because it would be a great advantage to us to not have to outsource that to another software company and then data transfer that into PestPac.
Got it. And part of your collaboration in building this door-to-door functionality, you kind of shared your process, right? Your sales process and doing some mock videos and giving some feedback and design. So what was that process like?
Yes, I actually started communicating with Heath, who I understand a lot of the product development over there, and so basically just said like, hey, I do have a lot of experience in the door-to-door space. it's kind of my specialty when it comes to pest control. And so I just mentioned him that I would be more than willing to send some videos over to him to help him streamline the process to make it as simple as possible from point of contact to working that customer through the sale, collecting information, that information getting transferred into a service agreement, which is then signed at the door, transferred into the back end of PestPac, and then that customer is scheduled and then that first service completed shortly thereafter.
And in this process, I'm curious, did you have any kind of like aha moments like, oh, I didn't actually think about this? Like maybe the back and forth with the creation process, was it you finding it extremely helpful?
Yeah, I mean, like as far as the creation process of it, like I think the work that goes into it is a lot more extensive than I originally thought, and so just basically using my expertise to give some feedback on the process and the easiest way to create that process, and then Heath has kind of taken the lead at how that process is going to be created. But so I'm not necessarily sure that there's been an aha moment, but just helping him understand, like in the door-to-door space, kind of what a door-to-door rep is expecting and wanting when they're using the software, and then also leveraging that to make it so as an operator it's transferred smoothly into the operation side as well, and just giving the customer a good experience but not missing stuff and streamlining it as much as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that insight. Can we go to the next slide? So walking through this is like part of the process, right? And Mason, you've probably forgotten more about this than I may ever know, but the not quote, close, and schedule, right? And this is where the door-to-door functionality that is being developed with Sales Center is trying to touch on all of these points right there at the door. So Mason, you touched on this with the real-time data sync. No need to have all of these third parties connecting them in, APIs, all of this stuff, having one integrated platform. So you're not doing double manual entry, and it's really helping that process. And moving on to the next thing is doing it all in one place. All in one means you, in one screen, you're able to knock on the door, sell, schedule, collect payment, and that goes into the next one, of course, scheduling on the spot. Being able to schedule that initial service through BestFit, all from one screen. You're not fumbling back and forth between multiple apps. You're able to do it in one spot. And getting that payment right then and there is so crucial. And I think we're going to talk about this more, Mason, is how crucial it is to get that initial order scheduled when the customer's right there in front of you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, excellent. So if we can go to the next slide. So with this one, Mason, if you want to kind of walk through a little bit of like the changes that you're experiencing with like the old way of this versus the new way and the vision with PestPac a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And so currently, like with PestPac not having the ability to have a door-to-door function with it, is you're having to outsource to a different software. And so when you knock on someone's door, you're dropping pins, you're collecting information, you're transferring that information, which is often done by an employee. That information gets transferred then into PestPac. A service setup is created, an initial appointment is created, that's then scheduled and serviced. Some which then you have to have someone, basically their full-time job is data transfer from that software into PestPac. Whereas this new integrated system, if it works out the way that we think it will, you'll have the ability to right there collect all the information needed when you're selling someone. That information is then pushed into a service agreement, which is then signed by the customer, stored in PestPac. You then have the ability to go in and using BestFit to schedule that customer on the most effective routing plan for your technicians. And then that customer is then serviced not only the most effective routing, but as soon as possible to help with that idea of solidifying the sale following that initial contact.
Yeah, and this like the old way versus the new vision with PestPac is, trying to close a lot of gaps, a lot of fumbling around, and disjointed systems, so that way you get this one closed loop system, right? You knock, you quote, you close, schedule, sync, wash, rinse, repeat onto the next door. Now, if you can, just give me a little bit more about like what makes door-to-door sales in pest control industry like uniquely challenging.
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing is the ability to um I guess it would be like credibility on the door. Whenever someone goes and knocks on someone else's door, almost automatically that person has a negative connotation to that. And so the ability to flip that to be skilled enough where you can show the customer not only you're a reputable company, but you can provide value to them. Because through the door space, that sometimes is a challenge just because of that, the reputation that sometimes is carried with it. But definitely, if you're able to develop those skills, it's a very effective tool to put on accounts in density specifically, rather than you can have someone go into a certain area, and rather than being pretty sporadic, you might have someone put on 20 accounts in just a couple streets. And for routing purposes and profitability, that's huge for an operator.
Yeah, and being able to see all this on a map and everything that we're building with it, just it gives you the the in the field sales staff just more data that they can act upon, right? And some of the other things that we're going to talk about, like what we're building with door to door, can actually help with that as well.
Yeah, the ability to be able to view on your map all your current customers within PestPac, what their setups are, when their last service was, having that ability as a door knocker is huge, because you can build that credibility so much easier when you're talking to a potential prospect. You know the people in the neighborhood that you service. You're able to name drop those people and build that credibility through that social proof.
Right. And it's like finding those additional add-on sales, if you will, because you, as a door knocker, you might have sold a couple of people that, they said they had mosquito problems, for example, and you realize three doors down, there's an existing customer that doesn't have that mosquito service. Maybe you go knock on that door and be like, hey, your neighbor down the street just had a problem.
Yeah,
So
it's a great way to be able to upsell customers, current customers that you're currently working with already.
awesome. Can we go to the next slide, please? So diving into the metrics that matter, like again, on the right-hand side, we have those key metrics, right? 3.5 minutes knock to close time, which can technically be done as far as like in the Sales Center app actually doing it. 25% lower pre-service churn because you're able to get that scheduled immediately from the door with a time that works. You don't have to worry about calling the office, who's in the area, who can do it. The sales rep can do it with practically no training. And you also have the ability to have financing in there to win those bigger jobs. So all of this just leads to the technology being able to help be part of that big sales engine and get that real-time data back in with the company. And so if we can go to the next slide. So, all right, more door-to-door insights with Mason. So with this one, Mason, we kind of working through like these property details. This is technically something that we have live now. So when they have a pen, the rep can actually see square footage, how many beds, how many baths. And Mason, if you could chime in on a little bit about having these like property details available to the door knocker, how does that change the game?
Yeah, I think like property details are key for a few reasons, like the ability to know potentially, when how new the home is, maybe potentially when the customer moved into that location, as well as like square footage for pricing is a great thing, and then also the layout of the house. Like sometimes we know that in certain situations, certain layouts provide better areas for pests to develop. And so by understanding that as a door knocker, you're able to use that information to then build value to how you can help the customer, which then in turn helps you have a greater ability to close them there at the door.
Yeah, and the fact that doing this again, it's so nice that the rep isn't be like, so how many bedrooms and baths do you have? Right? They kind of know this and it makes them much more educated, before they even knock. So
Yeah,
being able to have that.
a big thing with door to door is you want to come off as the professional, and the more information that you have, the greater ability you have to come off as that professional, that the neighborhood as good as anyone. That's kind of your workspace, and if you're able to display that confidence and that professionality, then your ability to succeed in that area is going to be significantly greater.
Yeah, it's kind of like touching on this a little bit is building more credibility. Your reps just seem that much more credible and everything and that what they're doing.
Exactly.
So yeah. Can we go to the next slide? So being able to visualize we talked about this a little bit, is the map, having the map view with the knock status. So being able to lock in those knock statuses. Hey, knocked, not home, told me to leave, right? Logging all of those and being able to do this. So how do you typically plan your route and door-to-door strategy? I mean, what's the most important insights that you feel your techs need to know, and how should they be using them?
I guess like going into an area, one of the most important things is the ability to see existing customers in that area. So when a rep goes into a certain area to start knocking doors, often they're instructed to start close to existing customers. And the reason for that is because when we talk about that idea of social proof, the ability to go into an area saying, hey, I already work with this person. We're putting her out together while we're here. We can help you out. And being able to see that visually on a map is what makes someone, it's going to help them be more successful when they're out in the field. Being able to see that person, what their current setup is, what their pricing is. Again, it adds to that ability to the more data to have, the more professional you look, and that often will help you close more deals.
Yeah. And on a personnel side, what are some traits that you look for when you're hiring a door-to-door rep? Is there like any kind of traits or anything quote unquote on their resume that you would stand out to you?
I've with my experience working for a few different companies and then owning my own company, I've worked with hundreds of door-to-door reps, and I wouldn't necessarily say there's a secret formula to know who's going to be successful and who's not. But the one thing I can speak to is if someone has the ability to be persistent and doesn't give up, that's going to be a quality that is very sought after, just because there is going to be a lot of rejection in the day. And it's often long hours, like door to most companies. You're working from 1 p.m. till dark, so 9:30 on the doors, and sometimes people are starting earlier than that. So long days, you got to deal with a lot of rejection, and then someone that has a little bit of a competitive nature. So it's always good to have someone that has some competitive nature. So sports background often does quite good in situations like this, just because you're in a team environment often, and when someone's competitive, they don't want to necessarily see someone succeeding more than them. So when you have competitive people feeding off each other, it's definitely an advantage.
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way, but someone that's played sports, that's the competitive nature. It's also like what you were saying is like, don't give up, right? You're potentially one more knock away from hitting your number, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And is there any kind of metrics that you see in your successful salespeople? Is there obviously closing, but is there any other kind of metric that you look at as far as door-to-door sales?
Yeah, like the conversations that you have with decision makers is a big one to track. And so a lot of times that comes down to number of doors knocked on. And so that's another great thing with having, PestPac that has this ability to then use this feature is you'll be able to have all these knock statuses. So you'll be able to track, daily amount of people that you've talked to, conversations that you had, number of sales that were converted based off of those conversations. And so those are all important inputs that you can track with, what we should be able to track with this new update with PestPac. And so having that ability in turn is going to transfer into more sales, just because, as a numbers game, the more people you talk to, the more likely you are to convert some of those people into customers.
And you hit on something that kind of was going to lead me right into my next question, is you talked about like conversation with the decision makers, right? Like, so where in the conversation, like on the porch or with the customer face to face, is there something that you find that some of them get tripped up on or stuck at? And how do you train or coach them to kind of overcome that, or are you trying to prep them with technology, or can you share some insights with that?
Yeah, I mean that to be honest, that takes a lot of practice. There's so many different situations that you run into on where you'll face different objections from customers. But the main thing is you want to you want to continue on with the sale, and so you never want to get stalled out. And if you think of it as what your the proposition that you have, if you think of like the price of the service on one hand and the value on the other hand, at some point for that customer to say yes, value has to outweigh the price, and so your ability to continue on through your pitch, build more value with the scopes of service that you can provide for them and how it's going to benefit them as you paint that picture and build that emotion based off of activity they've had in the past. That's what transfers into closing deals.
Awesome. And have you kind of seen like a pattern with like, if a conversation is going past a certain amount of time range, do you feel like, you're either losing the customer or gaining the customer? I'm kind of curious, like, because, if they're trying to knock on so many doors a day and they spent so long with one customer, is that kind of part of the training? Like, if you can kind of spot like those
Yeah.
few signals?
Yeah, I mean, time's definitely really valuable out there. You don't want to waste time with people that are probably not qualified to buy. And so the big thing for me is when I'm out there, and one thing that I teach is when someone asks what we call like a buying question. And so a buying question could be as simple as like, how much does the service cost? Or does your service take care of ants? Or is it safe for my pets? Those are kind of all examples. When they ask those questions, you know that they have a reason to say yes to the service. They're already thinking about it. And so if someone asks me that question, I'm going to spend as long as I possibly can with them to make sure I can make a deal with them on the door. If someone's getting off tangent or they aren't really following the conversation, then that's where I'm going to be a lot quicker with them. But yeah, as soon as someone shows some interest by asking a question is when I kind of zone in and say, okay, this person's qualified to buy. I'm going to spend as much time and do whatever it takes to kind of get them over the hump.
Nice. Yeah, I was kind of curious about that because I hear people like, oh, this guy will just talk until the door closes in their face. Or do they just kind of like, do some of your reps just kind of know they get a vibe and they can kind of move on? They can kind of wrap it up and leave a card or something like that. So,
yeah, there's certain people that 99% of reps will never sell, but they're also it's very common that you get told no 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times before a yes comes. And so that ability to be pleasantly persistent is what we call it, like to be pleasant with the customer, but continue to be persistent with, the value you can bring to them. And mastering that is definitely something that takes a while, but if you can, it definitely translates into a more successful door-to-door rep.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wanted to kind of spend some time on this part because I feel like it's such a crucial part of this sales process and way of selling, is that when you have the customer in front of you and talking to them. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is part of the vision, and Mason, you've helped kind of make a lot of these ideas a reality, is doing it all from the field on one screen, being able to log that knock status, being able to even pull up sales literature, scripts for these reps, but having it all in one spot so that way they can see all of this information, they can read from it, but also being able to do other things that we'll talk about. And some of these things are coming in the second half of this year. So please be on the lookout for that. And then if we can go through the next screen. And this is the second step of it. So the first slide that we showed you was, before the yes, right? All of the tools that you could have before the yes, logging everything, getting a script, having company information readily available. But let's say we get to that yes, now we need to get an agreement signed. Still on the same screen, you're able to pull up the service agreement, quote the price. You're able to capture the credit card information right then and there, and schedule leveraging Best Fit. And I feel like, Mason, I want to have you chime in more about this, but getting that initial service scheduled right then and there with the customer, it does a lot of things, right? It reduces the churn, but you've locked in availability with the customer there. You're not having to have your office or somebody else call back to schedule that job. It's more seamless, it's more efficient. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think like one of the most solidifying things that you can do on the door is you get method of payment. So once it's all set up and you have the ability to collect method of payment right there, and not only can you collect it, but you can validate that the card is active and a good card. It saves the hassle of someone from the office having to call them to collect payment or collect payment because it was inputted incorrectly. And so that's a huge thing. Just like being able to streamline from point of contact to once that yes is said, collect all that. You have that all that data collected right there with them. That then gets pushed into a service agreement, which you can pull up right in front of them, go through it with them, get it signed. That will get sent to their email. And then payment is collected as well at that same time. And then you have that person scheduled. It's done right there. There doesn't have to be a back end data transfer. It's all collected and ready to be serviced whenever your next technician is available to do it.
Because with other processes, how and you've worked with other companies doing door to door. With the other companies and before all of this co-creation and everything you're doing with Sales Center and door to door, it was probably a lot of different apps and different pieces of software that you're kind of juggling through to get the everything you need. How valuable is all of this in one spot?
Yeah, I mean it's hugely valuable. The one great thing about PestPac is and I think I would probably can speak to a lot of operators, the ability for PestPac to reporting and just all the many features that PestPac has within the back end. And I think that's a reason why a lot of people choose to use PestPac as their CRM. But the challenge with that on the door-to-door space up to this point, PestPac hasn't had anything where you can transfer. So you are having to use multiple apps and then transfer this data from those areas into PestPac. And even the integration for most stuff isn't that great. And so you're still having to, manually input stuff. Whereas once this is all built out, having it all in one place and not having to deal with more than one app, one, it's just going to cut back the mistakes. Like anytime you have humans doing stuff, there's human error. And so if it can all be done on one screen and then pushed to the back end of PestPac, it's just going to be less human error. Your customers are going to have a better experience and you're going to be able to collect on more revenue that is sold.
Yeah, that's great. And if we can, and this is all coming in the second half of this year as well. And if we can go to the next screen. So elaborating even further on what we're doing with this functionality is the territory management. So this is being able to lasso territories for your sales reps, who has what area. You'll be able to draw it out, not necessarily rely on like hard-lined zip codes or towns, for example. Having a gamification dashboard, probably kind of tying into what Mason was saying, was like that competitive nature, right? You make it a game, who's knocked on the most doors, who's closed the most and everything. We talked about the media gallery and scripts, but also Service Express integration. This will essentially almost be practically like a streamlined self-checkout, either that your rep could do or the customer could do if they wanted to hand the device to the customer and kind of do a self-checkout. We are going to be embedding a Wave AI measurement tool. So AI measuring the property, getting square footage and linear footage of the property, and unified calendar. So that is what a lot of us are looking forward to also being implemented into the solution. So we can go on to the next one. Yes, and if you got a lot out of this today and you'd like to see a deeper dive, please, you can scan the QR code and we can have a further conversation. But also we want to open it up to some questions. I know we've gotten a few.
I can hop on here and facilitate some questions. So, first one actually being for Mason that we got that says, any advice that you would give yourself, knowing what you know now, for when you were originally starting your door-to-door program?
Um, I would say with the door-to-door program, like for me specifically, like just the transfer of skill from one person to another is a huge thing because you can accomplish a lot more with you know 10 to 20 people than you can with one skilled person. And so just being able to have someone that has the ability to train other people is a huge advantage when you're first starting out. And so for companies that maybe don't have that currently, it's something that you can look to hire someone with some door-to-door experience that's been successful in the past that can then go out and build a bit of a team for you potentially, where they then train them and get them up to speed.
Awesome. Awesome. Next one, maybe Mike, you can answer this one. Um, Generally across the industry, how is the door-to-door industry changing with all this new technology?
I think it's becoming more compelling to customers to really take a second hard look at it. The fact that you can have this technology already embedded with a solution that you're working with that has more of the industry standard. PestPac's been around for a long time. It's tried and tested, but having something that's dedicated to door allows, I think, a lower friction to get into it as far as securing the technology to allow your sales reps to go knock on doors. So the fact that this is being implemented into an industry standard of software, I think that's what's really changing this door-to-door space.
Absolutely. Um, One last question that we have here, and then actually there might be another one that just popped up. But this next one, Mason, you did touch upon this, but what can reps do to kind of mitigate that cancellation that might happen, when reps are saying, or they're booking that service, and then you might get a call back the next day with cold feet. How do you kind of prep your reps to combat that?
Yeah, I think it just goes with solidifying the sale. And so a lot of times the reason why someone will cancel following like a door-to-door interaction is just because they didn't completely understand what they were signing up for. And so a big thing with solidifying it is you do need to get a method of payment. So at the door, you want to get a credit card, Visa debit, whatever it may be, you need a method of payment that they're going to pay for the service with. Once that's done, in the customer's mind, like the deal's done, it's almost like they've already paid for the service a lot of times. But then you just want to also make sure that they understand whatever the terms of your contract are. Your initial service agreement, a lot of companies will be a year, a certain amount of services, and so the rep's ability to explain that simply and almost so it can't be misunderstood. And then if there is some sort of cancellation fee that is imposed on that, to mention that to them, to tell them, hey, within the first year, it's nothing crazy, but we do ask that you return the discount that we gave you on the initial service if you do decide to cancel. Just being transparent, door-to-door especially, because it sometimes does have that negative connotation associated with it. If you can lay out all the information quite simply and make it so they understand there's really nothing hidden to them, you're going to have a lot less of that fall off.
Very well said. This next question, what is the estimated time to releasing this into production? Um, as we mentioned, the property details feature is live for those using Sales Center, and then the map view is coming later in May. Some of those other roadmap items that Mike touched upon will be iterated the rest of the year, and we're going to be sure to update you when we have those finite dates as soon as possible. And then one more question here. Mason, you touched upon this, but this would be a good one to dive deeper into. This question says, how do you sell your pitch to your sales rep to go door knocking? Today, people are scared of strangers and won't open the door. So, how are you prepping your reps again to build that credibility, be that professional, consultative kind of rep in the field?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the draw to it is the opportunity that door-to-door brings. Like for those that are familiar with the door-to-door space, the reps that are successful do very, very well. Like, they're making upwards to anywhere from 40 to 70% commission on a lot of deals, sometimes maybe even more than that, depending on the markets that they're in. And so, we have door-to reps that are making well into the six figures in a summer period from really a 4-month period. And so when it's pretty lucrative once you get good. And so that's often how people overcome that initial scare of knocking on a stranger's door. And then also, having the ability for someone to train them so they feel comfortable. And no one's going to feel comfortable, the first few doors they knock on. But if you have someone that's experienced, that's been successful, and can kind of lead them down that roadmap, then you're going to have a lot more success with people wanting to stick around and actually make money at the door-to-door side of stuff.
Actually, I something I was kind of curious about too, Mason, is can you touch more on the pros and cons in your experience to hiring or reaching to a third party door-to-door sales company to work for you versus having them in-house? Do you have a preference? Can you talk to like the pros and cons to that in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, so we personally have never hired like external marketing company to do door to door, but I do have a little bit of experience with it. And so the one pro to hiring like outsourcing that is you often get an experienced team. So it's often someone that has done pest control for a while, that understands the industry a little bit, and has been successful on putting on accounts for other companies. That's kind of, that's their business model. They recruit people that know how to sell, get those people trained, and then come in and just put on X amount of accounts for a company. And so you can get into the door-to-door space without really having to have a lot of experience with doing it yourself. The disadvantages that often come is you do pay a premium for that. So you're going to pay a little bit more for those accounts than if they were in-house, as well as you don't have quite as much control over those reps, because it's almost like a different company that you're hiring, different contractors that are going to come in and work for you, but they're going to work for you kind of in their own way. And of course, there's going to be some input there. And that, I would advise that the person that you're working with, you've had a communication with them, and it's someone that you feel comfortable in working with. Whereas the disadvantage, I guess, to having in-house, it is a little bit harder to go out and recruit those reps. And so if you don't have experience in the door-to-door space, it's going to be fairly hard to, get that experience without actually doing it. But the advantage is you often pay a little bit less out in commissions, and then you do have a little bit more control over those reps, what's being said, and how everything is set up. So there's definitely pros and cons to both sides of it, but door to door, when done correctly, it's a great way to grow your business. You can put on a lot of revenue in a dense area, where as internal marketing is great, but it doesn't have that pro of the route density, and route density is key whenever you're trying to be profitable. So yeah, you might take a hit on those accounts originally, but if you're confident that your service can keep them on for long enough, it's a great way to grow the business.
Yeah, that's well said. And something else, everyone should always be mindful of if they're considering this is, dependent upon your area that you service in your state, pay attention to local regulations and to if there's any, legal regulation that you need to comply with to be able to sell pest control door to door. So that's just something to throw out is, if you don't already know and you're exploring it, checking on that and making sure that even your sales reps need to be trained, certified, and so forth to be able to sell door to door with pest control. And another follow-up question is there a certain, do you find that it's mostly like college kids that, are more into this? Because I'm almost wondering if it's word of mouth. Like they talk to their friends like, oh, I made blank amount last month. You really ought to come work at this company, Yeah. I was just kind of curious if you see like a demographic.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the demographic often is, college students, and on their summer break, they go out and sell pest control door to door. But because it is quite lucrative, and especially now the door to door industry, a lot of more people have moved it into almost a career. You have people, uh, the successful college students in that 3 month period, like I said, can make into six figures, and there'd be people in the door space with their teams making over $1 million in a summer, and so it definitely can be lucrative that way. And so whenever you have someone that's successful and they tell friends about it, often it does attract other people. So that is often the demographic, but it can be turned into something that can be a full-time job as well, especially if you're in a market where it's nice most of the year, and you have that ability to go out and knock doors consistently.
Awesome. That was great. Mason,
Yeah.
thank you so much for the time. And Rich, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it looks like we don't have any more questions, so good to wrap up now. But I want to thank everyone for their time, for joining us. This recording will be sent to your emails, and special thank you to Mason for just lending us your expertise and your time. We're very appreciative, and everyone on the call, reach out if you have any questions. And looking forward to connecting with everyone again soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks again, Mason.
Yeah, no problem. We'll talk to you guys later.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.